Hello everybody and welcome back to Mellow Makes. In this episode we'll be creating a shrine. To make the base of our shrine we're going to start with some foam. The foam gets snapped in half and then the edges are cut off to give us a rounded shape. With those edges out of the way we can go ahead and round it up. Now we can go ahead and start roughing up the edges using a series of different tools. I do think this is starting to look pretty good and raggedy, but I do want to make the top less flat, so the way I'm going to do that is by taking this rock and rolling it against it. After all, rocks do make the best rock texture. Now that our piece of foam has been nicely textured, we're going to go ahead and give it a black base coat. And while this is drying, we're going to go ahead and move on to the shrine. I'm going to make a wooden shrine, so I'm going to use popsicle sticks. And now we have something that resembles a planter box. I go ahead and add a top onto it, that way the building can sit on top. Now it's time to make the aforementioned building. I start with some foam board. This piece I cut, but not all the way through, that way it would all stay together, but it would still give me a nice curved shape for the rooftop. I made 2 of these side panels so that way the roof could rest on top of them, and then I also made a box, and this will be the base to our building. We just need a few more popsicle sticks. I'm going to start on the top with the decorative piece, which I make into a boat shape, and then I'm going to also add a few other popsicle sticks to look like supports. With the top in place, I can go ahead and start securing the side pieces. For this part, I just glue them on long and then I use a pair of side snips to make a nice flat cut. I also go ahead and add a few vertical pieces going up and down to kind of hide the corners. With our building made, it's time to paint. Everything starts with a nice black layer. Once the black layer has been completed, I go ahead and start using a light brown color, just going up and down, and I'm leaving it streaky on purpose. I'm hoping to make it look more like a wood grain texture, especially on these foam boards that I used for the legs. Since the brown is out, I'll also go ahead and add the dirt to our foam. The final part is to add in all the details. I liked the grainy texture that I got from just making a dirty brushing. However, I want some more finer details, so I take a fine liner brush and I'm just doing my best to give it more lines and more feeling to it. While I struggled to paint some lines, I'd like to take this moment to thank all of you for getting this far in the video. If you like my content, please consider liking and subscribing, it would really mean a lot, and the likes do make it easier for me to have other people find me through the algorithm. With the shrine all detailed up, we can move on to the ground. For the ground underneath the shrine, I'm going to go ahead and mark out where each pillar touches. Then I'm going to rip out the foam so that way it's out of the way. Next up is some detail work. And I have this piece of clay, and I need to turn it into a flat sheet. However, I can't seem to find the handle for this pasta roller, so we're going to go ahead and take it a slightly different route. Huh, oh yeah. That worked great. With our clay now flat, we can go ahead and take these cookie cutters and make a bunch of different shapes for leaves. With the leaves cut out, we go ahead and add some of the soft pastel chalk to each of them. I'm choosing red, orange, and yellow to give it a fall vibe. When they come out of the oven, they look like this. Now we can go ahead and add them to our base. I think this is looking super cute so far, but I still want to add some more texture, so I'm going to go ahead and add one of my favorite things, static grass. Static grass is one of my favorites because of how easy it is to use. You put down a layer of glue, you attach that black piece, and then you just press the on button and you get really nice grass. Just make sure to flip it over and give it a few spanks. Get rid of all the knotty pieces of grass that you don't want to keep. Before the static glue dries, I'm also going to go ahead and add some of this redwood debris, just to give the base a little bit more interest. When I had originally bought this, I didn't realize that they were sheets, but I'm just going to crumble it between my fingers and use it as a scatter. I think it looks really good. To make sure that none of this stuff falls off, I'm going to go ahead and use my E6000 spray, and hopefully this will all lock it into place. Make sure to pay attention here. This is really important, okay? Did you catch that? Good, I'm glad. With all of that, our base has been completed and we're left with this. Our next step is the Pokémon. Yes, clay, that would be a good start. But actually, I think some aluminum foil would be a better start. So I take a little bit and I ball it up and add the clay on top. I'm going to start with the body of the Pokémon, that way I know how big the head, arms, and legs need to be. Using my silicone tools, I add a V shape on the front and the back of the body. Now it's time for the arms. I go ahead and take a ball of clay and I roll one side of it longer and the other side a little shorter. That way there's a hump in the middle. Then I cut it down in half. This should give me 2 almost equal arms. I go ahead and round the edges on the arm, and then I use my sharp tool and make 2 fingers. The little amount of clay that I cut off is used for the thumb. I pinch and pull, making the fingers a little bit more rounded, and then I add on the thumb to the other side. Then the arm gets placed on. And this is what it looks like with both arms attached. Now it's time to move on to his toes. I make a round clay sphere, cut it in half, and then elongate it just a little bit so it's more egg-shaped. Now I'm taking a thicker wire, and I'm just going to use this as the leg instead of wrapping it with clay. To attach it to the wire, I go ahead and add a very small snake of clay around it, giving him little Mickey Mouse shoes, and then by blending it upwards using different tools. And we need to make 2 of them, of course. With that, the body is done. But, well, I'll let me explain it.
So I worked really hard on this head, and I put it up next to the body, and it's too small. His head is too small. I'm gonna have to double the size of this, so hold on tight. We're gonna go through this.
Yes, not until after making it did I realize that that head was way too small. So I went ahead and just doubled the size, and with that we have a much better noggin for our onion boy. Celebi's eyes gave me a lot of trouble. In the anime they're one size, in the game sprites they're another, and depending on what angle you are looking at her, it is just a totally different shape. So I went ahead and made this really big shape and then realized it was just a little bit too big, so I definitely just went with what felt best, but I used my different tools to carve in the shape of the eye, and eventually I am left with a shape that I really did like. I make sure to carve out the mouth and also make the antennae. I attach the head to the body using a snake of clay, and then everything gets sent into the oven for baking. Thankfully, everything survives the bake, so we can move on to the painting. Celebi starts with a nice lime green base coat, and then I go in and add a darker green to the tip of his head. Using the same darker green, I go ahead and add the rest of the color to his body. Next up, I add the dark brown around his eyes. And I add a blue to the tips of his antennae, and I also use the same blue for his eyes. After I put on the main color of the eyes, I also go ahead and add the white to his eyes. I also add a darker blue to the inside of his eyes to create an ombre effect. So the middle of his eyes are darker and the outside of his eyes are a little bit lighter. Using the tiniest paintbrush in my arsenal, I go ahead and add a black line around the eyes. With the blunt end of another paintbrush, I add the sparkle in his eyes. I went ahead and made his wings off camera, but just know they were a piece of plastic that I stippled Mod Podge onto and cut into shape, so that way they would still be see-through but not totally see-through. But with all that, it's time for the project pictures.